I feel like not enough people are talking about franchising. To put it in perspective, after COD Champs this year, everything will be different, and everything will be different indefinitely. The 5 organizations that we covered on the Dispatch just a few days ago, those 5 locations will be permanently in Call of Duty Esports. Envy and Splice are the only confirmed prior Call of Duty organizations that will be in Call of Duty Esports for the future. There's no relegation, right? Esports is turning into regular sports. The same way the Yankees don't have to qualify for their spot in the MLB each season or each year, is the same way these organizations won't have to fight for their spots either. And in case you're not aware of the locations that are confirmed, let's recap and go over a few more locations, ones that I think that possibly could be involved next season. Let's go and talk about the first 5. So the first 5 confirmed locations for the Call of Duty League are Dallas, Texas, aka Envy, Toronto, Canada, aka Splice, Paris, France, Atlanta, Georgia, and New York, New York. Now, what do we know about these locations? Now, the first thing, pretty standard. They're all OWL based, right? They're all involved with the Overwatch League, which is not surprising considering Activision Blizzard was known to be giving them kind of first dibs, first bids on everything. Now, what is interesting in regards to these locations is the announcement displays both a Canadian and a French location. And for me, kind of doing some more research and have pretty much been like my lab at my desk for the last few hours, for the last few days, trying to decipher exactly what do the numbers mean? What do the locations exactly mean? And for me, this shows Activision Blizzard learned from Season 2 of the OWL, rather learn from Season 1 of the Overwatch League leading into Season 2. Now in Season 1, talking more about the Overwatch League more specifically, there were 9 US teams, 1 Europe, 1 Korean, and 1 Chinese, which meant that 75% of the OWL for Season 1 was composed of US teams. And I think in Season 2, Activision Blizzard, for the most part, kind of gained a better knowledge of what their target audience is because of how influential the Chinese viewership is, maybe how important it is in North America, not just the U.S. They added 2 U.S. teams, obviously, but 2 Canadian, 1 Europe, and 3 Chinese teams. So the U.S. in Season 1 went from controlling 75% of the spots to controlling 55% of the spots. And like I talk about, Chinese viewership for esports and certain ones, especially, but in Overwatch more primarily, is insane compared to the way that North America or even Europe treats esports in itself. They realize the future, if you're Activision Blizzard, that exists with their game in other countries, despite the home location more being in North America. Now, these locations are established, right? When we talk about where these are going to be filled out for Call of Duty, where they have been in prior, these locations are established by ownership groups and organizations with Activision Blizzard. And I personally think that Activision Blizzard has had conversations about what cities they want in the league, but I think it's more of a matter in terms of what these organizations are willing to spend. So if you have someone who is just so hardcore on saying, hey, we really want Denver, Colorado. Well, they're not in the Overwatch League, but these guys are willing to spend a lot of money. They want to be here. They have a good basis for it. There's a good organization behind them. Yeah, we'll make that happen. Not a big deal. I don't think it's going to be a matter of, they have to, but they would prefer locations that they're familiar with. But like I said, if you're Activision Blizzard, you most likely will prefer one, but sometimes it's just the familiarity of going with what has happened previously in the OWL, but I don't think it's going to be that much of a big deal. Well, why would they prefer those? What's really the big deal with that? Why would they even prefer those in the first place? I mean, obviously they're in the Overwatch League, but what does that really mean? Up to this point, it seems like Activision Blizzard wants this Call of Duty League to be as similar to the formula that they have currently working in the Overwatch League. I mean, from city locations to OWL partners, now to team branding, I think they want as much to carry over as possible into another franchise esport that also happens to be under their wing as well. So what does this mean for Call of Duty exactly? The way that I was kind of referencing a little bit earlier to my point, now to here, what does this mean for Call of Duty? How does this necessarily impact Call of Duty? Obviously, OW wants it to be similar. It seems as if the city names, all those things are starting to transfer. First off, in terms of the viewership and the way that those things correlate the locations, etc., since Call of Duty Esports has a long history and it's been around a decade, that to me kind of indicates that we don't necessarily have to worry about where our viewership comes from. Like, we know where the viewership is going. So for the OWL and for these ownership groups, they most likely want to be based in North America, not just for COD, but for the future. It's safe. It's a safe estimate and an opportunity that they're going to have. So the locations play a huge factor in what organizations may be interested next. Because like I said, it's not a mystery, right? We know where the viewership comes from. Maybe you might find a spark, right? Maybe after the first year, you throw in a location, you're surprised by the viewership, you're surprised by, the amount of support that's being shown from that area in specific. It could grow. But for the most part, decade long of factual numbers and estimates that all indicate that North America is the prime spot for this game of Call of Duty. So locations, I think, will help slim down the options of what teams or ownership groups may be out there. Now, let's talk about a few cities that I think have a shot at being involved in the Call of Duty League this season. I know it's taken a long point to get to this particular area, but it's important to kind of lay out the reasons why the locations play a factor, how we can decipher what these locations could possibly be based off the organizations who want to be interested. Well, why would they be interested? Just told you. So these are the reasons why and the locations that I think will be involved in the Call of Duty League next season, or possibly have a chance to be. First one, Los Angeles, California. One, if not two spots, depending on San Francisco, California, which I think could also be a spot. I think London, England could also be one. Boston, Philadelphia, Orlando/Miami, Vancouver, along with Houston, Texas. Now let's talk on Los Angeles fast. It will be it. No questions asked. Like, Los Angeles for me is just the overall clear-cut favorite, and I'm so confident in Los Angeles. I think there might even be a second one. There's already been rumors talked about prices that have already been thrown out there, etc. And I think depending on how much San Francisco's involved, you might have two LA, maybe and one San Francisco, maybe one LA and one San Francisco, so that you can have an LA spot get kind of more money developed over time leading into Season 2, much like how Overwatch League prices, pretty much rose from Season 1 to Season 2, so that could be a factor. And some interested parties that I think could also be wanting to have a few of these spots. In terms of LA more specifically, you have Immortals, who owns the LA Valiant, aka MIBR, as well. For the Overwatch League as well, you have the Kurokis, who own the LA Gladiators. They own the Sentinels. You also have Cloud9, right, who also do own the London Spitfire, by not necessarily a spot that involves California or even the entire U.S., but they're based here. And I feel like the way that Cloud9 works, they've always kind of wanted to be that North American organization, one that's kind of representing, a number of different esports. I think they want to try to generate everyone back, or get their organization back to where it is usually, and not have to worry about trying to supply the need and the demand in two different esports that are franchised in a country or even a location that's nowhere near where they are. So I think the Cloud9 could be a bidder, and I think that's something to definitely keep an eye out for, despite them being known in the Overwatch League and a different location. Next team we have also Genji, right? They're going to be stationed here as well. They also do own the Seoul Dynasty and do currently possess a Call of Duty team. So they're kind of pretty much based in Korea in terms of their Overwatch League team, but much like how Cloud9 works, I mean, we talk about far long distances. They probably want to try to be where they're centralized at. So it wouldn't surprise me, already having a Call of Duty team, how much pressure they've shown on the year up to this point, that they want to be in LA possibly as well, if not in the Call of Duty League. Now, a few other teams, I think we have 100T up there. I think we have FaZe, TSM. In terms of 100T, I think that they could also be a bidder. I don't believe they possess enough money as of this moment, but could be interested. You have FaZe Clan, who's kind of in the same situation. I don't believe they have enough money either, from the talk that I've heard from the bidding rumors that have been going out there. Both 100T and FaZe haven't necessarily been in those conversations. And if you are FaZe, you possess pretty much no history in franchised esports. At least 100T is involved in the LCS, so you kind of have that. And also TSM, right? I mean, they're going to be a pretty worthy partner. They're involved, obviously, when it comes down to the LCS, one of the biggest esports organizations in the world. I'd be surprised if they didn't show an interest, and if they do show an interest, I'm sure that their preferred location would be where they're based in LA as well. Next location, San Francisco. I think this could also be one, depending on how the California spots work out. Obviously, in terms of the Overwatch League, you have NRG, which is pretty much known as the Shock in terms of the Overwatch League. So there already is a team that's based here. I'm not sure if NRG would be 100% down to want to have a Call of Duty Esports spot, so that could be a factor of which that opens up. This could also be a spot that's a little bit cheaper than LA. We talked about a number of different esports, or rather even in regular sports, LA is the prime spot. It's where you want to be. It's like New York. It's like, a lot of these really popular spots, LA is the one to grab. So if you're maybe just a little bit southern of that, have all your property, pretty much all your investments In California, you just got to travel a little bit, not too far. So I think you could see organizations who I talked about who maybe have a little bit of less money in terms of this, or maybe teams who aren't as interested in throwing up however much that prize could be or how much that bidding could get up to. Teams like TSM, FaZe, 100T, Genji, etc. go for something like this if the price of bidding is too high. And like I said, I think California is a huge selling city. I think by Season 2, I would be shocked if there aren't 3 teams in this particular state. So let's move on. Next one, we've got London. I feel like this city makes a ton of sense. It's international, obviously. I was surprised we saw France was kind of one of the initial ones that were, kind of added in terms of that first 5 city list. So I think it only would make sense to have London be represented as well. It's kind of like for Call of Duty, with how much of a basis there is in England, it would be kind of strange to see France get a spot, but not the most primary EU location get one either. So I think it makes sense. I think already with the London Spitfire being based here in terms of the OWL, if Cloud9 is interested, let's say LA doesn't work out, if they're not even interested in LA, they go for this spot, would be a pretty easy grab, if not for another organization, if they don't mind being placed in in a location maybe that they're not previously invested in. Next one, we've got Boston, right? A huge market for sports. I feel like Activision Blizzard would love to bring over kind of that Boston-New York rivalry that already exists, in regular sports. I know they really make that a massive target in terms of the Overwatch League as well, and I think they want to kind of bring that same thing into Call of Duty. You also have the Kraft Group, who's based here and obviously own the Boston Uprising in the Overwatch League, so I feel like Boston would be something that would just make a lot of sense. I'd be shocked if they weren't in here by Season 2, so if that makes sense, I think Boston would make a lot of sense. So let's move on. Next one, we've got Philadelphia. This one, for me, it's kind of standard, right? You have the Fusion who are based in here in terms of the Overwatch League, another very profitable city. East Coast has a lot of presence in terms of regular sports, and I remember not long ago, there was a job posting by the Fusion in terms of themselves kind of talking about wanting to have a basis in Call of Duty, and I believe that was prior to Black Ops 4, and I think I might have tweeted about it. There was a little bit of kind of speculation that was made on Twitter, like, hey, is the Fusion, much like how Genji at the time was wanting to kind of get involved, maybe the same thing could be happening with Philadelphia. So they might already have a future. They might already be in conversation with Activision Blizzard on wanting these spots, and I think that, for me, would make sense as well. It's a city who's shown interest. It's an organization, rather, who has, and I think that city would work out very well. Next one might come as a little bit of a surprise. I've got the Orlando, Miami, Florida area. The Misfits, a.k.a. the Florida Mayhem, and the Overwatch League are based here. And you talk about there's a lot of East Coast teams that I've already mentioned in this list. Why would it be, necessarily Florida in this case, even when we haven't really heard too much noise from Misfits in terms of their want to be in Call of Duty over the years? I have been hearing a lot of word about Orlando recently in the news that they want to be the center. They want to be the home of esports. And we've heard Las Vegas make these claims. We've heard this, pretty much the entire state of Texas make these claims as well. But I've been hearing a lot of word from Orlando, right? I've been hearing a lot of word about that city that they want to be the center of it all. Talk with local colleges, talking with Disney, which is a pretty big deal, obviously, that they want to be involved in that esports situation, that esports discussion. So I feel like if there were, right, an interested party, maybe if it is Misfits in this situation, or if we're talking, more specifically the Florida Mayhem and the OWL, they might want to have a spot here. And I think that it would make sense in terms of, when you are kind of going for these locations, it's important to kind of know the surroundings. When you're going to this city, hey, are we going to have fans here? Is there actually going to be a future of esports that could exist in this area? Depending on, like I said, if the major ones are already grabbed, in your opinion, of LA and New York and Boston and Philly and all these places, maybe you go toward a place like Florida, which, like I said, is going to be kind of more closer to the Atlanta spot. That's not too far off, but I feel like it is going to be a nice little area. It's a place that clearly wants to be involved in esports, and you don't find too many cities, at least as of right now, that are willing to make claims like that. Let's go and move on quickly, though. Let's go from the East Coast now to the West Coast. Vancouver, I think, could also be a spot. Vancouver Titans are obviously based here in the Overwatch League, and Luminosity is obviously a part of that organization group as well, and obviously do possess a team in Call of Duty. I feel like this would be a city that could easily kind of slide into one of those West Coast spots. It would help with the regional divisions, which is going to be important when they try to decipher those. The East Coast is going to have a huge presence there. It's kind of a matter of trying to split those across. So I think that would make a lot of sense if you are Activision Blizzard. Hey, it's an easy spot to kind of fill. You already have Luminosity, who has a history in the in the esport itself, and I feel like that spot could be another Canadian one. That would make a lot of sense. You'd have some Canadian base, North America, big spot for Call of Duty. Let's kind of expand north a little bit from the U.S. So I think that spot for me would make a lot of sense. Move on to our final spot that I think might be filled. There's a lot of question going on right now in terms of Houston, Texas. Why? Because Optic Gaming is based here, right? They own the Houston Outlaws Overwatch League spot. However, there have been a lot of rumors coming in as of recently that Immortals, the team that I obviously talked about earlier, based in LA, might be buying out Optic Gaming from Infinite Esports. So pretty much becoming a partner of Infinite, and in that pretty much partnership, they would own OG in that example. Infinite Esports would be able to keep the Houston Outlaws in that situation. So pretty much the way that it works is that in the Overwatch League, you can't possess two different teams just because of conflict of interest. I'm sure there's a lot of contract details that involve that. So essentially, if Immortals wanted to buy the Optic Gaming roster, Houston Outlaws doesn't come along with it. So if that's the case, my personal opinion is that Immortals, if they were successful in this venture and capturing, Optic Gaming, then they would probably take OG to LA if they were wanting a spot. I don't think Houston would necessarily be a prime target for them. It's somewhere that they probably don't want to be invested in. It's kind of maybe their competition, but also if they are a partner with Infinite, how does that kind of play a factor? So there's a lot of little things in terms of where OG could be. They're kind of being cross-divided across the entire country in terms of, are they going to be in LA? Are they going to be in Houston? What's going to happen with Optic Gaming? Are they going to be sold? Is Infinite interested in something like that? So I think that, depending on this deal, if Immortals can purchase Optic in this example, that most likely means that Houston probably won't be an option in this instance. It could be, but I just don't see it being their prime position. I think they want to be in LA, and I think that would make a lot of sense. Now, those are the cities that I have personally theorized. They're solely based off what I think makes sense and ones that I feel Activision Blizzard, along with these ownership groups, ones that they'd be interested in as well, ones that they'd all want. But trust me, when I say franchising is important, stay up to date with it. Follow it. Make sure to be a part of franchising because it is going to be the future of Call of Duty Esports. And of course, make sure to join us on our journey as well. Make sure to follow us on our journey and continued coverage of the Call of Duty Franchise League here on the Esports Dispatch.